Millionaire Catches homeless boy dancing with his paralyzed daughter. What he did next shocked everyone. Hello. Welcome and welcome back. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe for more uplifting stories. Now sit tight, relax, and enjoy. The mansion stood like a fortress of wealth, tall white pillars rising above trimmed lawns, but silence ruled inside its walls. For over a year, the home had carried no laughter, no playful noise, only the steady hum of machines and the soft roll of wheelchair wheels on polished floors. At the heart of that silence was Anita, Mr. Ade's only daughter. She was just 6 years old, once a lively little girl who loved running through the garden, with her braids bouncing behind her. But after a terrible accident, her legs no longer obeyed her. The doctors had called it permanent. Mr. Ade had spent a fortune chasing every possible treatment, but nothing had worked. That afternoon, Mr. Ade stepped out into the garden, expecting the usual scene. Anita usually sat in her wheelchair, staring at the flowers or fiddling with a book. Her smile had become rare, her laughter almost forgotten. But what he saw stopped him mid-step. Anita was laughing. Not the soft, polite kind of smile she sometimes forced when people tried to cheer her up, but real bubbling laughter that rang through the air. Her small hands clapped together, her cheeks flushed with joy. In front of her was a boy. He couldn't have been older than 9, barefoot and thin, his clothes ragged and hanging loosely on his body. His hair curled into wild knots, his knees were scraped, and his skin carried the dusty bronze shade of a child who had been outside for too long. But his eyes sparkled with mischief. The boy was dancing, twisting and turning with exaggerated steps. He hopped from side to side, pretended to slip, then caught himself dramatically, making Anita squeal louder. He pointed at her as if daring her not to laugh, and she laughed harder. Mr. Ade's first instinct was anger. How had this stranger entered his compound? Where were the guards? His polished shoes pressed hard into the grass as he prepared to step forward. But then he froze. Anita wasn't just watching. She was leaning forward, her back straight, her arms stretched out as if trying to copy the boy's movements. For the first time in months, her eyes looked alive. Her toes, usually still, shifted ever so slightly in her sandals. Mr. Ade's heart pounded. He stepped back behind a marble pillar, unwilling to interrupt. The boy noticed him. Their eyes met briefly, but instead of running, the boy spun in a playful circle and bowed like a stage performer. Anita clapped wildly. Mr. Ade gripped the pillar tightly, torn between anger and a strange, fragile hope. Something was happening in his garden, something no doctor had managed to bring out of his daughter. For the first time in a long while, he chose to wait and watch. The boy kept moving, as if the garden had become his own stage. He bent low, rolled across the grass, then jumped up with a grin so wide it almost split his face. Anita's laughter filled the air, echoing against the mansion walls that had known too much silence. Behind the column, Mr. Ade watched every detail. His chest tightened at the sound of his daughter's joy. Months of endless therapy sessions and medical bills had done nothing. Yet this barefoot boy, with no training, no plan, was awakening something in her. But questions stormed his mind. Who was this boy? How did he slip past guards and gates? Was he a thief pretending to be innocent? Each possible answer made him clench his jaw harder, yet he couldn't bring himself to step in. Not yet. The boy's performance grew bolder. He hopped on one leg, flailed his arms in silly shapes, and puffed out his cheeks until Anita nearly toppled from her chair with laughter. At one point, he pretended to faint dramatically, then popped back up, pointing at her as if demanding applause. She clapped until her small palms turned red. Mr. Ade noticed something he hadn't seen in months, her body moving in rhythm. Anita leaned forward, stretched her fingers, even shifted her legs slightly, as if trying to join in. It wasn't much, but to him it was a miracle. Minutes passed like that. The mansion grounds seemed far away, the world beyond the gates forgotten. All that existed was a girl's laughter and a boy's energy. Finally, the boy dropped to his knees, panting as though he had finished the biggest show of his life. Anita squealed, begging him for more. He gave another silly bow and rolled into a new routine without hesitation. Mr. Ade pressed his back to the column, eyes shut briefly. Something deep inside him stirred something he had buried after every failed treatment and every disappointing doctor's report. It was hope, fragile but undeniable. When the boy's act finally ended, he waved goodbye dramatically and slipped toward the hedge by the sidewall. Anita shouted after him, her face glowing brighter than the setting sun. That night, long after Anita had been tucked into bed, Mr. Ade sat in his study. The image of her glowing face replayed in his mind over and over. Who was that child? Why had his presence done what thousands of Nara and the best hospitals could not? One thing was clear. Tomorrow he would not remain hidden. Tomorrow, when the boy returned, and he was certain the boy would return, he would step out from behind the pillar. He would get answers, no matter what it took. For the first time in over a year, Mr. Ade felt the night wasn't pressing down on him with silence. He felt anticipation. Tomorrow the truth would come. The next afternoon, Anita was already waiting in the garden. Her hands tapped impatiently on the arms of her wheelchair, her eyes darting to the side hedge every few seconds. The late sunlight wrapped her in a soft glow, as if the day itself was expectant. Sure enough, the boy appeared again. Barefoot, his shirt even dustier than before, he slipped through the hedge with ease. He raised his arms in an exaggerated greeting. "Ready for another show?" he asked, grinning. "Yes," Anita squealed, clapping her hands. But before the boy could begin, Mr. Ade stepped forward from the veranda. His shadow stretched long across the grass. The boy froze mid-step, his smile faltering. His eyes darted toward the hedge, then back to Anita. "I'm sorry," he blurted quickly, voice low. "I didn't mean any harm." "It's all right," Mr. Ade said firmly, though his tone wasn't harsh. "I just want to talk." Anita's head whipped toward her father, her eyes wide. "Daddy, please don't send him away. He's my friend." Her voice carried a rare urgency that struck Mr. Ade's heart. He crouched down so he was eye level with the boy. "What's your name?" "Chik," the boy replied after a pause. "How old are you, Chik?" "Maybe 9, I think." "You think?" Chik's gaze dropped to the grass. "Nobody ever told me my birthday. I never had a cake or anything." Mr. Ade felt his throat tighten. He pressed on carefully. "Where do you live?" Chik hesitated, his toes curling into the dirt. "Around, sometimes by the old bus stop, sometimes in the laundry room at the apartments when nobody's there. I just find places." Anita's hands gripped her chair tightly. "He's not bad, Daddy. He makes me happy." Mr. Ade turned to look at her. Her cheeks were flushed, her posture upright, her eyes glowing with life. She hadn't looked this alive in months. He returned his gaze to the boy. "What made you come here yesterday, Chik?" "I was walking by," the boy answered softly. "I heard music from your garden. I saw her watching from the window. She looked sad, so I started dancing. At first just to make her smile, but then she wanted more, so I came closer. I wasn't trying to steal anything, sir. I just—" His voice cracked. "She looked like she needed it." Silence hung in the air for a moment. Then Mr. Ade turned to his daughter. "Anita, how do you feel right now?" "Happy," she said instantly, "like I can move again, even if I can't." Mr. Ade's eyes fell to her bare feet, and his breath caught. Her toes twitched. Just a small movement, but real. Something shifted inside him. He knew then he couldn't turn this boy away. From that day forward, Mr. Ade did not chase Chik away. Instead, he gave the guards clear instructions. Whenever the barefoot boy showed up, they should let him in without question. And so, every afternoon, Chik returned. Sometimes he carried scraps of roasted groundnuts he had picked up from the roadside. Other times he came empty-handed but full of energy. No matter what, Anita's face lit up the moment he stepped into the garden. He danced, he rolled across the grass, he leapt like a clown performing for kings. Other days, he made up silly stories about animals in the forest, or acted out characters with wild voices. Anita joined in however she could, spinning her chair in small circles, lifting her arms, leaning forward as if trying to jump from her seat. The change in her was impossible to ignore. Her laugh, once so rare, now filled the mansion daily. Her shoulders no longer slumped. Her eyes sparkled with the eagerness of a child who had rediscovered joy. One afternoon, as music floated from the garden speakers, Anita tried something no one expected. She placed her hands firmly on the armrests of her chair, pushed hard, and lifted herself halfway out. Her arms trembled, her face tightened, but she stayed up for 3 whole seconds before falling back, panting. I did it, she gasped, grinning. Chik jumped in the air and spun around before kneeling beside her. You're amazing, he shouted, his own laughter bursting like fireworks. Mr. Aid, who had been watching from the veranda, felt his throat tighten. He had spent fortunes on therapists, flown across continents, chasing hope, and yet here it was, unfolding in his own garden, brought by a boy who had nothing but bare feet and laughter. At her next medical checkup, even the doctor was astonished. I don't know what you've been doing, he told Mr. Aid, flipping through her chart, but keep doing it. This kind of response is rare. Whatever it is, it's working. That evening, Mr. Aid stood silently by the doorway as Anita and Chik played with a small ball in the living room. She tossed it weakly, he caught it and made funny faces. Then she laughed so hard she nearly tipped her chair. Hope had become part of their home again. But when Anita finally went to bed, Mr. Aid found Chik sitting alone on the back steps of the mansion, staring into the darkness. You can't keep living like this, Mr. Aid said gently, standing behind him. Chik shrugged, picking at a thread on his shirt. I've been doing it my whole life. Not anymore, Mr. Aid replied, his voice steady. From today you live here. You'll have a room, food, clothes. You'll go to school. You'll be part of this family. Chik turned sharply, his eyes wide. Why? You don't even know me. Mr. Aid's voice softened. Because you gave my daughter something no doctor could give. You gave her hope, and I can't let the person who did that sleep on a cold floor again. The next morning, the mansion felt different. For years it had stood like a grand shell, filled with silence and echoes of what used to be. But now the walls carried laughter. One evening, as the golden sun dipped low, Chik performed his grandest trick yet. He rolled on the grass, flipped, and landed in a dramatic bow that made Anita burst into uncontrollable laughter. She clapped until tears rolled down her cheeks. You're the best dancer in the world, she shouted. Chik grinned, wiping sweat from his forehead. And you're the best queen in the world. Mr. Aid walked over then, crouching beside them both. His eyes shifted between the boy with dust on his ankles and the girl with fire in her smile. His heart felt heavy and light all at once. You two, he said softly, have turned this house into a home again. Chik blinked, unsure how to respond. But Anita reached out, holding both her father's hand and Chik's hand together. Her voice trembled with excitement. We're a family now. Mr. Aid swallowed hard, unable to speak for a moment. But his silence carried more than words could. For the first time in years, the mansion was alive not because of wealth, not because of doctors or medicine, but because of love, laughter, and a barefoot boy who carried hope wherever he went. And from that day, the mansion was never silent again. If this story moved you, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe for more inspiring and emotional journeys. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We treasure every message from you. Until we return, stay kind, stay hopeful, and stay with us.
Black Stories. Subscribe, like, and share.